Hello there, I'm Isabelle, and today I'll be making this spooky Pokemon. And to add an extra dash of spookiness, I'll make it realistic. If you're not familiar with Mimikyu, this is actually a costume, and its real appearance is unknown. So let's start with the costume. I made a ball of clay in the shape of the head, covered that in plastic film, and added a toothpick just so it's easier to handle. I'll set that aside and fetch this nice textured fabric I had in my fabric stash. Then I pattern and cut out the pieces I'll need to make the head. I sewed the darts together and I intentionally did a bad job so it will look more creepy and rough. Also, I doubt Mimikyu is a skilled seamstress. I Modpodged the clay popsicle and stuck the fabric on to make a sort of paper mache but with fabric instead. Fabric mache? I want the costume to be hollow and I'm hoping that a few layers of Modpodge will make the fabric sturdy enough to keep its shape on its own. I'll add a few pins to secure the piece and accidentally turn it into a voodoo doll. Anyways, while that is drying, I'll work on the body. I cut several pieces of fabric that I will stitch together to make a sort of patchwork. The Pokédex also says that the costume is made from old rags, so it kind of makes sense that Mimikyu would have to join multiple pieces together to make its costume. I sewed the two patchwork pieces together to make a cursed looking poncho. Then I made a second clay popsicle, Modpodged the cursed poncho on top, and left it to dry. I also made two ragged ears that I filled with a bit of polyester stuffing. I also added a small wire so I could bend the ears in the shape I wanted. I set that aside to check on the now dried voodoo head. I'll remove the pins. The fabric was glued really tight to the plastic film, so I had to remove the clay and peel it off. Then I repeated the process with the second headpiece. This will be the back of the head. He loves me not. He loves me not. He loves me not? Anyways, I have all the pieces I need to make the costume. I'll start stitching the two headpieces together. The Modpodge fabric was so stiff that it was hard to get the needle through, and I couldn't find my thimble, so I improvised by wrapping my finger in a few layers of masking tape. It worked pretty good. I still got stabbed a few times, but the tape stopped the bleeding. I left a small opening to add polyester stuffing because the fabric wasn't holding its shape as much as I had hoped. I sewed the head shut, and then I'll sew the ears on and connect the head to the body. I'll trim the hem in a zigzag to match Mimikyu's design. With a black marker, I drew the eyes and ran my finger over it to smudge the ink a little bit. Drew a squiggly line for the mouth. And then drew on the pink cheeks with a pink marker. I then decided that using a string for the mouth would look a lot better, so I did another voodoo looking contraption to get the string to stick to the face. When that was dried, I darkened the tip of the ears and wrapped them in black string. I drew on the eyes, well, the real ones, and used a bit of brown acrylic paint to weather the fabric and make it look old and dirty. The costume is done. Let's sculpt Mimikyu. Its real body appearance is unknown. The Sun Pokédex entry says that a scholar who saw what was under its rag was overwhelmed by terror and died from the shock. So I tried to think of something really terrifying, but all I could think of was Mr. Mime. This Pokemon just gives me the creeps. But also hear me out. Mr. Mime? Mimikyu? Do you see the common theme here? So fortunately, I can't fit a whole Mr. Mime underneath this costume, but I can try to incorporate a few elements of its design. I'll use air-dry clay to make its feet, tentacles, ghostly appendages. I have no idea what it's called. I blended the clay together and added a bit of texture with a ball tool. Once that's done, I'll add a bit more clay to shape the head, poke 2 holes for the eye sockets, and then added 2 balls of white clay for the eyes. My footage is a bit blurry. I think my camera was trying to avoid recording this cursed footage. I also wanted to add horns like Mr. Mime, but didn't have enough space underneath the costume to do so. I'll keep shaping the head and I'll add a toothless smile, just like Mr. Mime's. Off camera, I made a wooden stick and a creepy looking claw, primed it black, and then dry brushed some brown paint on the wood stick and a bit of purple highlights on the claw. And then started painting my cursed little friend. I made a rough gradient in purple, then painted the cheeks in pink like Mr. Mime, and painted the eyes orange with a little black pupils for that evil looking appearance. It also really highlights how uneven I sculpted the eyes. I super glued the wooden tail and the claw on the body, and it looks so silly and bad. I mean, sure it looks cursed, but not in the way I intended. Anyways, let's set that aside and move on to the base. I made a tree armature with wire and aluminum foil and then covered it in air-dry clay. Carve in some lines to create a bark texture and left the clay to dry. For the base, I'll be using this wooden base and will cover that in a mixture of sand and Modpodge. I tried to spread it evenly across the base, then covered a portion in plastic film and pressed the tree in the spot I wanted it to be to make an indent. I'll remove the plastic film and add a few rocks here and there. And once that was dried, I primed it in black. I dry brushed a bit of brown and green on the base. Then I painted the tree. Used super glue to stick it in place. I added a generous coat of glue, then sprinkled on a bit of moss, sprayed it with some isopropyl alcohol, and then went back again with a bit of watered down glue to seal everything. When the glue had dried, I painted the moss in a darker color because it looked fluorescent green, and that was not the look I was going for. And now I can add Cursed Mimikyu to the base and its costume so we don't have to look at it anymore. And that's it. Let's move on to the beauty shots. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you next time.